The United States District Court for the Northern District of California was a furnace of tension. Every seat filled, every breath suspended. Under the high, solemn arches, Judge Edward Chen sat poised behind the heavy oak bench, his sharp gaze dissecting the courtroom with surgical precision. His fingers tapped lightly on the polished wood, a rhythm that only heightened the dread hanging in the air. Then, in a moment that would be replayed endlessly on screens around the world, Judge Chen leaned forward, lips twitching before parting into an unmistakable laugh. A short, cutting sound that seemed to crack the courtroom's oppressive silence. Every journalist froze. Pens paused mid-sentence, eyes wide with disbelief. Elon Musk, seated at the defendant's table, felt the weight of the room's collective gaze sear into his skin. His cheeks flared crimson, the flush of a man who had never known public humiliation until now. His jaw tightened, hands curling into fists beneath the table, hidden from view but betraying the storm raging inside him. Across the room, Judge Chen's smile faded into a stern, knowing expression. For a split second, their eyes locked. A silent, brutal confrontation. One, a man whose life had been built on defying rules. The other, a guardian of the very structures Musk despised. Whispers spread like wildfire among the gallery. Muted gasps and hurried notes scribbled down as the magnitude of the moment settled. There was no place to hide. Musk's legal team shifted uncomfortably, papers rustling as they dared not meet their client's searing glance. Somewhere deep inside Musk, a seed of vengeance took root, nurtured by humiliation and unspoken rage. That fleeting, mocking chuckle would not be forgotten. It would become the catalyst for a sequence of events so unpredictable, so devastating, that even Musk himself could not foresee the wreckage it would leave behind. The humiliation still burned beneath Elon Musk's skin as he sat stiffly at the defendant's table, pretending to review documents he no longer cared about. Proud by nature, impulsive by instinct, Musk had built his empire by defying expectations and rules alike. Yet, somewhere in the ascent to unimaginable wealth and power, he had grown increasingly isolated, imprisoned by a fortress of influence he no longer trusted. Friends had become advisors, lovers had become fleeting distractions, and sincerity was a luxury he could no longer afford. Despite the armies of lawyers, PR strategists and corporate executives surrounding him, Elon Musk, the visionary billionaire, was utterly alone. Across the courtroom, Judge Edward Chen observed the defendant with cool detachment. His face, carved with the discipline of decades on the bench, betrayed no emotion. Chen believed deeply in the supremacy of law over fame, principle over spectacle. His reputation was built on methodical reasoning, rooted in a lifetime belief that the courthouse should be the one place celebrity carried no weight. To him, Musk was simply another defendant, one whose arrogance threatened the very fabric of the judicial process. The lawsuit itself was a storm years in the making. Musk's infamous 2018 funding-secured tweet had sent Tesla's stock soaring, only for the promised buyout to vanish into thin air. Billions were lost, shareholder trust was shattered, and regulatory bodies pounced like wolves sensing weakness. Beneath the legal jargon and procedural filings lurked deeper currents. Pride wounded, public trust broken, and the fragile myth of the untouchable genius crumbling under scrutiny. Musk wrestled privately with a growing sense of invincibility that no longer felt empowering. Instead, it gnawed at him, a reminder that the very people he once inspired now scrutinized every move, every word, searching for cracks in the armor. On the outside, he played the role of the untamed entrepreneur, but within, a gnawing fear grew louder. That control, once absolute, was slipping through his fingers. Societal pressure pressed from every angle. Wall Street analysts debated his fate in sterile television studios. Financial journalists dissected his downfall with almost gleeful precision. Tesla shareholders, once fervent believers, now circled like vultures, demanding restitution for shattered dreams. In the corridors of power and media, whispers grew louder. Musk had finally flown too close to the sun. Alone at his table, jaw clenched against rising despair. He realized the real battle wasn't with the court or the investors. It was with the slow, suffocating collapse of a persona he had spent a lifetime building, and the terrifying question he dared not voice. What if he had finally lost control? The moment the courtroom recessed, Musk's legal team rushed to surround him, speaking in urgent, clipped voices. Papers shuffled, strategies were pitched, counter-arguments were frantically suggested. Yet Musk barely heard them. Their words blurred into a meaningless hum, an annoying buzz that only deepened his fury. He sat motionless, staring at the grain of the wooden table, the laughter still ringing in his ears. Rage simmered beneath his skin, a silent burning storm. He barely contained. They had mocked him, openly, publicly. They had reduced him to a fool in front of the world. "You need to let us handle this, Elon," William Adamson, his lead attorney, urged, desperation creeping into his usually steady tone. "There's still a way to argue." Musk cut him off without looking up. "Argue what?" His voice was a low growl, thick with contempt. "That I'm wrong, and they're right. That I should beg for mercy." Adamson hesitated, sensing the shift, the tightening coil ready to snap. Musk's mind wasn't in the courtroom anymore. It was somewhere darker. Somewhere forged long ago. In the back of his mind, old memories surfaced. Nights spent nursing bruises given by bullies, the taste of blood swallowed with shame, the sneers of those who had underestimated him. Today's laughter was no different. It was humiliation, raw and stinging. He closed his eyes for a second, forcing himself to breathe. Humiliation had once made him run. Now it made him plot. "If they laugh at the rules," Musk muttered under his breath, "I'll destroy the rules." Ignoring his attorneys' protests, Musk slipped his phone from his jacket pocket, fingers moving with mechanical precision. One by one, he made calls. Brief, precise, chilling in their efficiency. Trusted bankers, pliant PR strategists, allies who owed him favors they could not refuse. His instructions were clear and unquestionable. Money would move. Statements would be drafted. Entire mechanisms of power would shift before the court reconvened. Across the room, Victoria Reynolds, lead counsel for the plaintiffs, watched Musk with narrowed eyes. She leaned toward her associate, whispering, "He's too calm. That's not a man preparing to lose." Musk hung up the last call, his expression unreadable. His legal team huddled around him again, alarm flashing in their eyes. "Elon," Adamson said carefully, "whatever you're planning, it's reckless. We still have a shot if—" "No," Musk interrupted flatly. "You have a shot at losing gracefully. I don't lose." There was a finality to his tone that silenced the room. In that moment, something shifted irreversibly. Musk had no intention of playing the game by their rules. He was going to redefine the battlefield entirely. weaponizing the one thing no court, no judge, no system could outmaneuver: unimaginable wealth. As the bailiff called for the court to reconvene, Musk rose from his seat with a slow, deliberate grace. His eyes flicked briefly toward Judge Chen's bench, a thin, humorless smile touching his lips. The humiliation he had suffered was about to be answered. Not with anger, not with vengeance, but with a masterstroke no one in that room could have predicted. The courtroom buzzed faintly as Judge Chen shuffled a stack of papers, preparing to resume his dismantling of Musk's defense. Before he could speak, Musk rose from his seat with a sudden, unannounced movement that sent a ripple through the gallery. His attorney reached out, whispering urgently, but Musk brushed the warning aside with a subtle shake of his head. Every eye snapped toward him. The silence was suffocating. "Your Honor," Musk said, his voice steady, carrying clearly across the room, "I respectfully request permission to address the court directly." Judge Chen stiffened. The violation of courtroom. Protocol obvious. A long moment passed before the judge's curiosity eclipsed his disapproval. "Proceed, Mr. Musk," Chen said cautiously. His fingers steepled beneath his chin. Musk stepped forward, every inch of him controlled, almost clinical, rather than continue down a path that only wastes time and resources. He began, "I am proposing something different, something immediate." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. I will personally establish a $3 billion fund to compensate any investor able to demonstrate genuine financial harm from my funding secured statement. No conditions, no delays." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Journalists scribbled furiously. Some simply stared, mouths agape. And further, Musk continued without a flicker of emotion, "I will allocate $2 billion to the Securities and Exchange Commission, specifically for the development of enforcement technology and investor education initiatives." A stunned murmur rumbled through the room. Adamson buried his face in his hands, while Reynolds leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Musk was not finished. "Additionally," he said, "I will surrender my next 3 years of Tesla stock options. They will be redistributed among Tesla's factory workers, rewarding the people who build the company's future." Judge Chen leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing as he studied Musk's impassive face. Was this real contrition or a masterstroke of manipulation? The legal mind in him calculated consequences. The human part wrestled with disbelief. Inside Musk, there was no turmoil. He had already made peace with the path he had chosen. Redemption would not come from apologies or admissions of guilt. Redemption would come through dominance, through an overwhelming show of force so complete that the court, the investors, even his critics would have no choice but to accept his terms. As he finished speaking, the air hung heavy, charged with shock and unspoken questions. Musk returned to his seat without another word, leaving behind a courtroom frozen in collective awe and uncertainty. Judge Chen sat in heavy silence before delivering his decision, the weight of it pressing against the brittle air. His gavel struck with reluctant finality. The court accepts Mr. Musk's proposal, finding it meets the aims of investor protection and judicial economy, he declared, though his voice carried the slightest tremor of conflict. In that moment, legal tradition bowed not to arguments, but to overwhelming force. Musk remained impassive, offering no hint of triumph, no smile of vindication, only a polite nod that barely concealed the calculations still burning behind his eyes. Outside, the world erupted into chaos. News anchors scrambled to reframe narratives. Some declared Musk a visionary who had outwitted an outdated system, while others condemned him as a plutocrat purchasing absolution. Editorials clashed violently across headlines. In Silicon Valley boardrooms, admiration warred with envy. Tesla's stock price surged, a visible exclamation point on Musk's audacious maneuver. Yet with the soaring valuations came a slow, rising tide of resentment, an undercurrent that whispered, rules no longer applied equally, and justice wore a price tag. Inside the sterile confines of his glass-walled office, Musk reclined in solitude, the city lights flickering against the windows like distant stars. His phone sat untouched on the desk, vibrating occasionally with congratulations he would not answer. On the massive screen before him, the courtroom replayed in an endless loop. Again and again, he watched the moment Judge Chen laughed. The laughter that had scorched his pride, that had lit the fire under his rebellion. For a long time, he said nothing, just stared, jaw clenched, heart heavy beneath the armor of victory. Money had shielded him from defeat, but it had not mended the fracture within. Alone with his silent triumph, Elon Musk realized something chilling. Winning the battle had cost him something deeper, something no settlement could ever restore. In a world where wealth could launch rockets, acquire empires, and twist the very definition of justice, the meaning of true accountability blurred beyond recognition. Musk had not just defeated a lawsuit, he had rewritten the rules of consequence. Yet, alone in the cold glow of his triumph, a quieter truth gnawed at him. Power had shielded him from judgment, but it had also carved a canyon between him and the fragile, flawed humanity he once belonged to. In the silence after the laughter, Musk had reshaped the battlefield, but at what cost to the soul of justice itself?